The reason I mention the victims' names is because this case isn't just about the Ripper. It's about those victims that the Ripper had taken their lives. Yeah, that's right. So I want to make sure that everyone knows all their names. Catherine Edwards, Mary Jane Kelly. Because this isn't just about the Ripper itself, it's about who he hurt. Or they, I don't know what the Ripper is. The Whitechapel murders, as people across England celebrated a bank holiday on the night of August 6, 1888, 39-year-old Martha Turbin, also known as Emma Turner, strolled the streets of Whitechapel route to a pub crawl. It would be the last night of her life. A mysterious murder which has been coiled in shameful brutality for many years past. These poor people deserve justice. I hope this helps find the person. Martha was out for the evening with her friend Mary Ann Colin. Colin was known as the street as Pearl Polly. The two women both nothing wrong with this, just what they say in this book is I'm not gonna say, but there's nothing wrong with if that's the only way. And heavy drinkers had stated their drinking spree at around 10 p.m. and soon met with two soldiers just before midnight. Each woman went off with one of the men, presumably to play her trade. Okay, we're gonna continue down here. At 3:30 in the morning, cab driver Alfred Crowe returned to his apartment along George Yard. As he climbed the stairs, he saw a body on the landing, but he didn't stop to investigate. The homeless often crawled up there for a night's rest. Just over an hour later, John Reeves, a dock worker, saw the same body. He did take a closer look and found Martha Turbin laying in a pool of blood. Reeves ran to the main road and found police constable Thomas. Soon, local doctors Thomas Kelleen also arrived on the scene. He noted that Turnberth's dress had been torn, pulled up above her waist. Kelleen pronounced dead and noted she had been stabbed 39 times. He later estimated she had been dead about 3 hours when he arrived at George Yard, reporting on the death a few days later. A neighbor prepared okie dokie. He prepared something. Jeez, I hope all of this magazine can at least tell us if he did it. I lost my place. At the inquest, Dr. Killeen gave a more detailed report on Turnberth's wounds based on the autopsy he performed. She had been stabbed in the lungs 7 times and once in the heart. Jeez, that's a little overkill, don't you think? The later punctured Killeen said would have been enough to kill her. He also found stab wounds in her throat, liver, spleen, and stomach. Another stab went through her sternum, and Killeen believed a larger weapon had been used for that blow compared to others. Pearl Polly came forward and recounted the time she had spent with Turbin, Maritha. Okay. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing names here. On the night of August 6th, considering her a key witness, the police arranged for her to look over possible suspects. Guards at the Tower of London. Polly assured the police she could identify the two men she and Maritha had been with before the murder. But the two men were not among the guards in the lineup. The police arranged for another lineup with a different group of soldiers. Polly picked out two men she said were the ones, but they had solid alibis. Another potential witness was Constable Barnett. Early on the morning of August 7th, before he had been called to the murder scene, he had been a soldier near George Yard. The man said he was waiting for a friend who had gone off with a person like Polly. Burnett claimed he would be able to identify the soldier if he saw him again, so he went to a lineup as well. But the soldier had an alibi for his whereabouts when the murder took place. The Enquirer constable later in August with the jury determined that okay, I'm just calling her M, had been killed by some person or persons unknown. And from what I've heard, not all psychics know what they're talking about, and some do. I can't disagree or agree with using a psychic. I think it's very complicated and very confusing because, like, some of them are right and then some of them aren't. But things get kind of confusing during cases, so people turn to psychics and religion and other sorts of things. However, as the murders went on, the the removal of the internal organs figured potentially in the murder of Annie Chapman. So that's the second murder attributed to the Ripper. Her autopsy showed that Jack had cut out her uterus. Okay, so yeah, maybe he has some type of like medical knowledge or degree knowledge or something where he actually might have went to school and people are like, yeah, maybe he's like a very well educated person. Maybe like he's well educated and he's just bored, so this is why he's doing it. Some people believe it's a wingman. Some people have no idea. Like me, I'm like, I mean, one guy kind of sounds like he could have been it, but I mean, there was no proof, which is the hardest thing. Especially back then, I feel like a lot of people say crimes were easier to commit because like there wasn't DNA, there wasn't like extra police stuff, there wasn't like scans, blood, fingerprints, social media. Like there are cases from this time period, but not as like apparently as severe as this, where people are like, yeah, this one's a little more like harder to pinpoint. Or today, someone might mess up and post about it on social media, which has happened actually. Because people get so used to showing everything online that they might mess up. So, Shaka cut out her uterus. When he. Okay, so are the families okay with you posting their names? Like, I I feel like it really, like, are these their real names or just like made up names, or like family members who were okay with giving their names? Because I feel like this is just so sad and so like not something you want to like talk about or hear about all the time, and it's posted and posted, and I don't know if the families like thought like this would be as big as it is or not, because like if they thought it was going to be this big, they might not have said okay. Winnie Baxter, the coroner on the case, said he had been informed by officials at the medical laboratory that someone, an American, had contacted the museum seeking several uteruses and was willing to pay for them. Evidence eventually, the unnamed American had approached another institution as well and had been rebuffed both times. Yeah, okay, that does seem a little weird, and that does not help at all. Nope. Okay, so leading the British medical, some people Baxter's story as they recall William Burke and William Harry, who some 60 years earlier had first robbed graves to provide for a doctor. Okay, so this is getting a little long, so we will continue with another part later and crocheting at the same time. We'll get better at this, I hope. Today we'll be talking about Jack the Ripper, the world's most notorious cold case, the unsolved mystery, the new leads, his double life. Dun dun dun. The neck cuts must have been caused with a long bladed knife, sharp and used with great violence. Meanwhile, letters and retried police officers continue to develop theories, uncover what they say are hard facts to back them, and even turn to science through DNA analysis to try to determine once and for all who Jack the Ripper was. Flying from the beginning, the difficult of identifying Jack the Ripper led to some outlandish and unsavory theories. The arrival of large numbers of immigrants during the mid and late 19th century stirred anti-Semitism that had existed in England since medieval times, leading some Londoners to point fingers at the foreigner born living in the East End. The first suspect in the Ripper case was a Jewish immigrant. However, as the murders went on, the helpful public offered other suggestions about Jack's identity. The murder was actually a large ape that roamed the streets. So we read some of that. 5 victims of Jack the Ripper. Mary Ann Nicole, found dead on August 31st, 1888 in Bucks Row, London. Annie Chapman, found dead on September 8th, 1888, Street, Spitful, London. Elizabeth Stride, found dead on September 30th, 1888. An entry industry has sprung up around Jack and his heinous unsolved killings. There's a whole magazine on you, dude. Oh boy, that is not what I signed up for today. Maybe we will continue this another. No, I'm joking. Meanwhile, amateur sleuths and retired police officers continue to develop theories, uncovering what they said are hard facts to back up them. So let's get some crocheting yarn. I just called it crocheting yarn. Yes, I know it's regular yarn. I just wanted to get it while I have it. And yes, we'll continue with Jack the Ripper in just a moment. I'm trying to tie this thing. Okay. Continue to develop their theories and... No, I tied it too tight. Darn it. I think that should be better. I have this whole bunch of random yarn that's just here. So that definitely is annoying. Okay, so we're going to continue with the story. Uncover what they say and hard facts that back them, and even turn the science through DNA. DNA has helped with a lot of cases through the years. And a lot of people with Ancestry.com and like Me Too Ancestry, like DNA test and those type of kits have actually helped solve a couple of cases. Which is kind of interesting because you never would have thought like some people would have gotten caught, but because of DNA and because they were sloppy, but back then they didn't have anything, now they do. Which is kind of interesting. So DNA definitely helps with cases, I think. Oh boy, Annual List tried to determine once and for all who Jack the Ripper was. From the beginning, the difficulty of identifying Jack the Ripper led to some outlandish and unsavory theories. The arrival of large numbers of immigrants during the mid and late 19th century, which was like way back when, different time period, didn't have as much DNA as they do now, and now I think, and didn't become a killer, but I think they're more careful than they used to be. Which is definitely something that I've noticed, which I know sounds weird, but I've just kind of noticed that has been a thing lately. But anyway. However, as the murders went on... Okay, I lost my place. Okay. The arrival of large numbers in the 19th century stirred and cemented that had existed in England since medieval times. Kind of perfect getup for the medieval times. I'm kind of like in between the two right now. Like I have like the cape and the hat. Kind of like Jack the Ripper did, which is why I dress like this. Some people actually believe it could have been women. I honestly don't know. And no, I didn't read that part. I've been reading about Jack the Ripper for quite some time now. A lot of people have had fascinations. And if you would like me to try a case that is not in my magazines and a different case altogether, let me know in the comments below. Also, I would suggest try out Barely and Kendall, I want to say Kendall Ray, and they also, she talks about Thorn, which is a group that helps people. And I would say try some different DNA, but be careful because you never know who could get in trouble. No, seriously, go ahead and use the DNA. It's good for some people. people cautious too. Like, oh, like, I wouldn't want to imagine finding out your family member is actually pretty nuts. And you're like, well, that wasn't expected. It kind of freaks you out, I bet. It would freak anyone out. Okay, I am trying to unravel this. You want me to get back to the story, don't you? I am so sorry.